Hey everybody, this is Joey from Roadmap Writers. Hope you're all well. Hi Kim. So good to see everybody on this call. Um, so first off, I'm going to mute everybody just so there's no background noise. Next, for those who don't know how to use Zoom, on the bottom of your screen you'll see a video camera icon. If you want to turn on your video or shut off your video, just click on that and it'll do what it tells you to do. And here's the chat box. So I'll just right over here. I think somebody is unmuted, so I'm just going to mute everybody. Leave your microphones off for now, just so there's no background. But in the chat box, that's where you could type in anything that you want. Just know everybody will be able to read it unless you click on a person's name, okay? Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Frankie, I don't know. I mean, you might have to shut off leave the meeting and come back. It seems like everybody else could hear. So this is how it's going to work. For the first 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about pitching, written and verbal. And then at around 3:20 p.m. Pacific time, Dorian Connelley, our COO, is going that was her if you saw her, is going to come in and hear 5 people pitch, okay? So I'm going to have take volunteers now. Does anybody want to workshop their pitch with Dorian? And just so you know, your pitch will be around 5 minutes long. And then Dorian, who's a genius, I'm just saying that because she's looking at me right now. No, she really is. Can help you form your pitch. She used to work at a company called Apex Entertainment. The head of the company did Secretariat, Invincible, a bunch of amazing movies. And then she worked at a company called Roar that represented the Hemsworth brothers. And now she's our COO. So, okay, so Carolyn and Kathy, you two are volunteered. So as I'm talking, if anybody else wants to volunteer, feel free, okay? Thanks, Celine. So Celine too, great. Okay, so pitching. Pitching could be scary. Pitching could be a little intimidating. It could just feel like I can understand why the nerves come in. And you're obviously pitching to somebody that you think could hopefully pick up your project. That could be a misconception. When you're pitching to an executive, don't pitch like you're pitching that particular project. Pitch that you're really pitching yourself, because the chances of them picking up that specific project is super, super, super slim. The best thing that you can do is for them to request your script. Like, this is amazing. Our development slate's pretty full right now, but what else do you have? We have this project. Can you write this for us? Build that relationship. And once you build that relationship with an executive a little bit more, then they could discuss picking up that project later on. So don't think of it like, this is my one project. This is it. This is all I am. This is one project. The executive really wants to know that you are a normal, fun, personable human being. So when you're pitching, first and foremost, your energy and your excitement has to come in. That's really important. So I'm just looking at Kim right now, who had a couple of general meetings last time. She was out in Los Angeles, and I would trust her in a room with anybody, because if she comes in, she's fun, she's dynamic, she's personable. If she came in and she was a total drab and she just didn't exude any kind of personality, it'd be very hard for the executive to want to work with that person for years to come. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to come in and throw confetti in the air and just try to be this person that you're not, but you really want to make sure that this executive leaves the room being like, wow, that person was fun to talk to. Whether that script is right for us or not, I do want to see if I can continue working with that person. Okay? So when you're pitching through Roadmap, your pitch should be 5 to 6 minutes long if you're doing a verbal pitch, or 1 to 2 pages long if you're doing a written pitch. Keep it concise. Don't try to throw everything out there. Even though you want to make sure that Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 for features, that you give enough information each that the story is clear, you don't want to fall into a pattern and be like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. It becomes too condensed. It becomes a little too verbose, and frankly, it could be a little boring when it's just like, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. So when you're pitching, I'm going to start with features for a moment. And it's the same for verbal and written. So what I'm giving you now is a template for both, okay? When you're pitching your feature, start with obviously the title, the genre, the log line, and 2 movies to compare yours to tonally. Okay, that's really, really important. And in any kind of pitching prep I do, I always say that at the beginning. And when people volunteer, I know these people won't because I know them. But usually when I do it with people that I don't know, they're like, yes, I get it. And then when they pitch, they usually always forget to do the tonal comps and to set up their genre. It happens 99% of the time. So when you're pitching, make sure that's really clear. Remember, the executive has no idea what your story is about. So it's really, really important that you paint the picture, because you could be pitching a comedy, and if you don't say it's a comedy, the executive might feel awkward to laugh halfway through, and it just kind of takes them out of it. So really start with the genre at the beginning and 2 movies to compare yours to tonally. Just when you're thinking of 2 movies to compare yours to tonally, literally just think of 2 movies that share the same tone. Don't try to be so specific, and don't try to say something like, well, my movie is so unique, there's no other movie like it. All you really want to know is what it's like tonally. Because when you say comedy, The Hangover is a comedy, Little Miss Sunshine's a comedy. It's so broad. So if you say it's The Hangover meets Bridesmaids, it's clear to the executive what kind of story you're pitching, okay? Don't worry so much about the About Me section. That'll come with the general meeting. After they read the script, and they love it, and they love the writing, and they liked your energy when you were pitching it, or they liked your writing when you were submitting a written pitch, then they could learn more about you then. Don't worry about contest placements. Don't worry about you think that your fantasy is going to do very good because Hunger Games did very good. Don't do the producer's job for them. You're a storyteller, so just come in and be your charming self and just worry about the story more than anything else. After the log line, go into the setting. Just quickly, if it's modern day Manhattan, you don't have to explain it. We know what modern day Manhattan looks like. But if it's a post-apocalyptic world or 1940s France, okay, good, Frankie. I'm glad you got it working. Then you want to go paint the picture a little bit more. I would say before you go too much into the plot, it's really, really important that you paint the picture, paint the foundation more than anything else. A lot of times writers will jump right into it so fast that the executive is playing catch up a little bit. So halfway through, they're like, oh, okay, so I guess it takes place here. Okay, I guess it's a comedy because that sounded funny. Don't have the executive play catch up. Otherwise, they're going to be taken out of it and try to piece the puzzle pieces together. Just try to make it, to set up the foundation. That's really important. And in Act 1, all you really have to do is set up the main character or characters, main characters. Try not to name more than 3 to 4 characters in the pitch overall for features. So let's say Jennifer is our main character, because I'm looking at Jennifer right now. Hi. And Sabrina's her boss, and Sabrina fires Jennifer. And that's a catalyst for the story, but Sabrina's never seen again. You wouldn't say Sabrina fires Jennifer, you'd say Jennifer's boss fires Jennifer. That way the executive doesn't think that they have to remember Sabrina's name. The less that you feel like you could not clutter the executive's mind, the better. Just so at the end, they're like, okay, so there's Jennifer and there's Sabrina and there's this person. Just name 3 to 4 of the main characters. That's it. And again, in Act 1, you want to set up the main character or main characters, the inciting incident, the break into Act 2, and one of the beats in the story that really exemplifies the tone. One thing that's going to really breathe life into your pitch is setting up a specific example in each act that exemplifies the tone. So if it's a comedy, what's the funniest moment in Act 1? What's the funniest moment in Act 2? If it's a horror, what's the scariest moment in Act 1? Etc. You don't want to end a pitch and the executive says, okay, great, I understood the story, but you said it's a comedy. What's the funniest moments? Breathing life into your pitch is really important so it doesn't sound like a book report. Setting up the tone is very important. Making sure the characterization is very clear. The emotionality is really clear. If you're pitching verbally and halfway through, your mouth is moving and you don't even know what you're saying, your brain has left your body and you're just you're sweating and you're a little nervous, go back to the last part that you remembered and check in with how that character feels and express to the executive how that character's feeling at that time. That's going to really help breathe life and add color to your pitch. In Act 2, a couple of the conflicts, a couple of the mini resolutions. If you have to name one more character in Act 2, feel free. Really hit home what some of the biggest cinematic set pieces are, i.e. what the biggest set pieces that exemplifies the tone. And act 3, always give away the ending in any pitch. Always give away the ending. Even if it's a really cool twist at the end, you should really, 99% of the time, the executive's going to want to know what the ending is. They would rather know it then than spend an hour reading a script, and by the end of it, they're like, wow, this went for a turn. They're more impressed with a writer that can really showcase their pitch from beginning to end and be like, okay, that sounds really interesting. Can they portray that in 100 pages, 110 pages or whatever? So always give away the ending. If you're pitching a sci-fi script or anything that's world building, an action and adventure kind of story, adding those cinematic pieces is important and setting up the world is important, but make sure your character is in the forefront more than anything. So if you're pitching and you're setting up this set piece and this kind of weapon that's used, just really check in with the character as much as possible. Your character is going to be the anchor for your story. So even if the executive halfway through is confused, and they often don't say it because they don't want to interrupt you, but when you start talking about the character again, that's when they start becoming more engaged if they're confused. Especially for sci-fi. An executive said this once, I thought it was very interesting. For sci-fi, you can have a very complex world, but your main character's through line has to be very simple. You could have a very complex protagonist through line, but that means the world has to be very simple. You shouldn't have both, specifically in sci-fi, because then it just becomes too overwhelming and the executive's like, what is going on? Try to keep your pitch to 5 to 6 minutes long. Don't read off a piece of paper. Don't be robotic. That's really important. Again, an executive would rather somebody's mic is on. I'm going to mute it. Who is it? Who's the culprit? Let me just do this. Okay, cool. An executive would rather you be nervous than you being like, Act 1. Cleopatra goes to the pyramids and finds that she blah, 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 blah. Don't worry if you have to take a breath. Don't worry if halfway through you're like, okay, hold on a second. I'm a little nervous. You don't want to make a habit of it, of course, but you really just want to come across like a human being. There's just one writer that pitches with us that some of you guys here know. And she's so energetic when she pitches. And in real life, she's so energetic and she's so passionate. And a lot of times an executive will be like, wow, I'm not really sure what your story was about, but it was so passionate that I have to read it because you're obviously over the moon about it. Again, that doesn't mean that if your personality isn't the outgoing type for you to try to be like that, but your passion has to come through. Executives say this all the time. I think this is for verbal pitches, but if you're pitching to a creative executive and they like it, then the next thing they have to do is pitch that to their boss. And usually that boss has to pitch it, if they like it, to the financier of the company. And what's going to really transcend from person to person is the passion. So if you're pitching something and you're passionate about it, and that executive reads it and has to pitch that to their boss, they're going to feed off the passion that you gave them when you pitched to them. So it's like a game of telephone. If you're doing a written pitch, your passion could still come out with the way you describe the characters, the way you really carefully create the scenes in your pitch. If it's sloppy, if there's typos, if you're just rushing through it, if it's formatted incorrectly, that passion is not going to come through. And I know to a lot of you, you probably just rolled your eyes like, well, obviously it's not going to be any typos in mine. You'd be surprised. So have somebody else read it. If you go to the Roadmap Writers Network and you want to ask somebody to read it, or just ask your friends, because sometimes you'll read something and be like, it's perfect. And then somebody else will read it and be like, there's a typo in every sentence. So just make sure that you have somebody else take a look at it if you're doing a written pitch. So there's that for features. For TV, it's a little different. You want to, after you set up the tone, after you think of 2 TV shows to compare it to, you want to give a list of the characters, about 3 to 4 characters, maybe 4 to 5, and simply just say their name, their age, and their description. Don't go too much into plot. And then you'll go into the pilot overview and then the series overview. So where features have more of a close-ending, TV should feels like the TV pitches. It should feel that it has legs to it. They could go for 3 to 5 to 8 years. For features, it should feel like it's over at the end. And if you're pitching a trilogy, or if you think there's going to be like 10,000 movies after this, don't worry about that. Just worry about this one. Don't worry about part 2, part 3, part whatever. Just worry about this one. At the end, when you're done, some common questions, if you're doing a verbal pitch, is, okay, who do you see as the main character? Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What's another one that's pretty common? You might get, okay, so you said it's a comedy. What's the funniest moment of it? One question that writers sometimes get is, okay, what's the most cinematic set piece of your story? So what's the biggest moment of your story? Why does this deserve to go on the screen? If you're doing a written pitch, you do not have the luxury of being asked those questions. The pro of having a written pitch is that it showcases your ability to write. So really make sure that your word choices are unique, but not pretentious, and fun and colorful and concise. So this is an executive reads your 2-page written pitch and like, wow, they really set it up beautifully. I really understood it. They're going to be more inclined to read your script because, like, obviously this person knows how to write. Does that make sense so far? Any questions so far? No? Everybody got it? I'm trying to think of anything else that I could add to this. That's thanks, Sylvia. Cinematic piece. So a cinematic set piece is like a plot point in your story. So it's a specific scene. It's a specific prop. It's something that without that, the story wouldn't exist. So a cinematic set piece would be the biggest plot point of your story. So I'm trying to think of an example. And a set piece could even be when in the Hangover, when they wake up and they realize their groom is gone. That's a set piece. That's a specific moment of your story that moves the story along. It doesn't have to be the most dramatic. It could be the funniest. It could be the biggest. It could be the most dramatic, the most horrific. It just has to be one of the biggest set pieces of your story, whether it's a feature or TV. For TV, when you're setting up the 4 to 5 characters at the beginning, make sure you don't want to give too much plot in the character breakdowns, but in the pilot, you want to see how they walk around. You want to see how they interact with each other, what their relationships are with each other. Why are you letting us see this story today? So in Friends, we open up and Rachel bursts through into the Central Perk wearing her wedding dress. So we open up today. So when you're pitching your TV show, why are you letting the audience in this pilot see your characters today? That's important. In the series overview, what's the week-to-week look like? What are some of the season arcs? You don't have to know what episode 2 looks like, episode 3 looks like, but you should have kind of a sense of what the end of season 1 will look like, the end of season 3 will look like, just so the executive could be like, okay, at least in this person's interpretation, it could last 3 to 6 years, and they'll be more inclined to want to read it because it has legs, even if it's just one interpretation of it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Jennifer, you're the only face I see right now. So every time I say that makes sense, if you don't nod your head, I'm like, oh no. So just keep nodding your head. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do some mock pitches. And I just want to say before I might just have everybody volunteer again. This is being recorded and this will be posted on the Roadmap Writers Network. So when you pitch, just know that your pitch is going to be recorded and it's going to be on the site. So if you feel comfortable with that, let's do it. If not, then I totally understand. So knowing that, who wants to volunteer to pitch? And Dorian will come on in a second. And if anybody has any last minute questions for me, let me know now. Dorian's a little tough, but she's a genius and she's great at what she does. And I'm really excited. And she teaches a pitching clinic that I think starts February 17th. So everybody raves about it. Okay, great. So Dorian, let me see if I could find you in this plethora of, there you are. Hi.
Hi.
So like I said, Dorian Connelley, who most of you know, or at least some of you know, is our COO. And she's great. This last question. Okay, Matt Barr, last minute question. When pitching a series, if you have a central character, but they're supported by a small ensemble, should all of them be name described? Yes. 4 to 5 characters can be named in your TV pitch. Okay? Not 8, not 10, just 4 to 5 would be ideal. Okay? So, Dorian, your first volunteer is Celine. So, Celine, if you... Selene. So, Selene, if you want to unmute yourself, take it away. And again, you'll have 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes, and then Dorian will give you her notes.
Hello, Dorian. How are you? Okay, so I have a feature. It's called The Girl Next Door, and it is a drama. And the logline is: a teen struggles to help her dying best friend while being haunted by the ghost of her dad. It takes place in Manhattan 5 years after 9/11, which is important because her father has died in 9/11. So Sam is the main character. She's 17, and she's been hit twice with 2 horrible things in her life. The first being that her father's death, and the second is when they're 17, her best friend Jessie is diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she is absolutely floored by this, as you can imagine. And he has just decided to accept it, and they give him like a 96% chance of of dying, and he's just like, forget it, I'm dying. And she doesn't accept that. She wants him to take experimental treatments. She wants him to try everything in his power, but he's like, no. So the story opens with we've seen montage of everything that's happened up to that point. We've seen the father die, not literally, but we've seen the Twin Towers. And Jesse's asked her to stay in his room because he doesn't want to die alone. And he shut himself off from everyone except her, except he won't accept her help. He just wants her there with him. So the Central Park is a really important, almost a character. Central Park represents life to them. They live on Central Park West, right next to the park, and they've grown up together. She moved there when she was 2. She literally is the girl next door, and they've had all their fun times have centered around that park. So she wants to get him back in the park because she thinks if she can get him in there, then he will realize that he wants to live, and we will fight. So Act 1 is about that, is about her trying to get him back into the park, and they even walk along the edge of the park, but he just won't go in because it's like he's shut himself off from life. In Act 2. She gives him her virginity. He's a virgin too because she thinks it's sad that he'll die a virgin, but also because she thinks that will perk him up and she's just trying to get him to want to live. So although he enjoys it obviously, but that's not enough to really make him go for the treatment. But she convinces him. Well, she tricks him into going to the park. She blindfolds him, takes him out on the night of the prom, and leads him into the park and gives him a private prom in the park. She's strung lights all over. They have a special spot in the park where they've always gone. So she makes him this beautiful prom, private. He walks really funny. He doesn't want to be around anybody. But he goes with her. He trusts her enough, and when she gets there, she unblindfolds him, and he's like, "Oh my God!" And he's like, "Why did you bring me here?" And she says, "I wanted you to fight. I wanted you to remember our times." And it works for a little while, and then they make love and they dance. It's a beautiful. That's really the cinematic moment I see is this moment in the park. It's really touching, and yet something people can relate to nature, the beauty of a park. It's very romantic, but it's also it's just like a universal thing of she's desperate and he's just like given up, and then all of a sudden he sees it and he says, "Okay, I'll do it," but then he completely breaks down. He just breaks down and sobs, and then she says to herself, "What have I done?" Because now she thinks that she's brought him more heartache, because what if he can't? He probably won't survive anyway. And he says he'll do it for her, and she's like, "Oh my God, now I'm bringing this guy more heartache." So then, what happens after that is she becomes so despondent that she has like a complete breakdown and destroys everything in her room, which most of the things have been gifts from Jessie and from her father over the years. So she completely has like a breakdown, and Jessie realizes, oh my gosh, she's going to kill herself if I die. So the tables are turned, and he has to try to save her. And ultimately what happens is she's also being haunted by her father. That's the thing I forgot to mention. I'm sorry. There's a magical realism quality to this, and it starts out in the beginning with a balloon floating from the park into the building, and then it's on her stroller, and so this magical realism kind of permeates throughout the movie, and we see her father coming to visit her, except we're never really sure if it's in her mind or not. And in the end, he finally comes to her and he says, Sam, death cannot rob us of the love we give away. And that is the thing that gives her the strength to go on. So then Jesse gives up on the treatments. He has tried them, but he says, I just don't want to do it anymore. I just want to be with you. She accepts it. They get married in the park, and then he does die. But it's sad, of course, but it's also uplifting because we've come to accept that death cannot rob us of the love we give away. And the balloon that was there in the beginning is outside as he dies, and it floats across the street. It's snowing. It's Christmas Eve. He dies on his birthday, which is Christmas Eve. No, sorry. Well, it's Christmas Day. Sorry, it's Christmas Eve goes into Christmas Day. He dies. The balloon goes, stops in Central Park, and then goes up, to the skies, and it stops snowing and it's clear. So that's the story. I realized I forgot to give you comps. I would say The Fault in Our Stars, and there was a movie. I'm really sorry, I can't think of the name, but I have to check this. August Rush, I think is the name. It's like this mystical. It's like got a lot of magical realism. It's about a boy searching for his parents, but there's a whole lot of magical realism involved in it. Obviously, I have to check into that. But that's what I can think of. It's got the idea of it's got the tone of The Fault in Our Stars, but it's got the magical realism that's completely different from The Fault in Our Stars.
Okay, cool. I would definitely think of a different comp for that second one because I'm not sure what that second movie is. Make it something that's like very well known.
Right.
When I was listening to it, I was obviously thinking Fault in Our Stars meets maybe like The Sessions.
Okay.
Or it's even got aspects of the Stephen Hawking that the redhead kid played. God damn it, I can't remember anything right now.
Yeah.
Because when he's deteriorating, she has to come to him and say, like, I need you to fight.
That's a good idea.
Good idea. I was thinking that too. Even though it's not like a biopic in the way that one is, it's kind of that meets A Fault in Our Stars a little bit.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
So I might think about those for a tonal comp. And I don't think that you have to choose for your tonal comp another magical realism thing. I think that just mentioning what the magical realism is and that it's the balloon and this symbolism is there is fine. I would use your comp more for the tone.
Okay.
And like, I was listening right away when you started it because see, I'm getting all teared up. My best friend, her dad died in the towers.
Oh,
so it reminded me of her when she was a teenager. Sorry. It's really sad. We're just sad in general now because of the fucking state of everything. And it also with that.
Hell yeah. That's what I mean, how the world can fall apart at any moment. So yeah. But I was, I live in New York, so the towers affected me a lot, obviously, so I can't say that I said, let me write a movie. It just it all came together in a dream. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and there are so many people that were like affected that day. A lot of lives were lost. And so especially if this is taking place in New York City, against that backdrop and then, but taking something so earth-shaking as that and then bringing it into this very personal story of her needing to save her friend because she couldn't save her father.
Right, exactly.
And she can't let go of either of them and figuring out how to do that. So I think that you did a really good job with getting the themes across and getting across some trailer moments and sort of the whole emotional like journey that this is. I didn't feel like there was anything that was really missing. I see what the movie is. And so I think you did a really good job.
Well, thanks, Dorian. That really means so much. Thank you.
Great job, Selene. Easy mistake.
Right. I've fucked up a few times.
Okay, cool. Next is Carolyn. And Kim and Jennifer, I better see you volunteering soon. Have fun, Carolyn.
Thank you. Hi, Dorian. This is Carolyn.
Hey, Carolyn.
Hey. So I have a science fiction 1 hour pilot. It is a cross between kind of the world building of Man in the High Tower and the action adventure of the 100. And basically the premise is that a
Man in the High Castle.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Man in the High Castle.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Okay, I was like, I think you said Man in the High Tower, and I'm like,
High Tower, yeah, no, that was a misspoke. Sorry about that.
Got it.
So it starts with, we get hit by an inertial cloud, a new scientific discovery that hits us and stops the world from spinning. And 500 years in the future, what has happened is that life is clinging to the termination line, which is the line that divides dark and light.
And what's the name of the show, real quick?
Termination Line.
Termination Line, cool. You're like, I was just about to tell you the title. Okay. Got it.
So Termination Line, sorry, my dogs are being jerks, as they always are, right when I go to talk. And so Termination Line. And society has been upended because the lighter skinned races have had to flee to the dark side of the line, and the darker skinned people can be in the light, which is where most of the life and resources are. So everything is upended now. So we're the light are on
like UV stuff and skin tone.
I'm sorry?
Does it have to do with like UV radiation and skin tone? Like why darker
that
skin?
Is correct. Yes.
Okay, got
yes,
it.
that we just can't survive. We just get skin cancer in like 4 days kind of thing.
Got it.
And so this is about, but the problem is that life is dying, that 500 years out, the ecosystem is finally about to give out. And so the scientists from both sides have decided that they have to go and find the bunker where the controls are, because when this initially happened, we did have a plan to blow up the moon and kind of nick the Earth on the side and get us spinning again. But we didn't do it initially because if we made any minor calculation problems, we would destroy the Earth. And by the time they decided we need to do it, the riots and the wars happened. They couldn't get to the bunker. So our heroes now have to find the bunker, take the risk, try and blow up the moon, and get the world spinning again.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you real quick because I was taken out as soon as you said that the world had stopped spinning. That's not possible. It's not possible for us to still be on the planet with it not spinning. It'll disintegrate. So
no, so actually centrifugation is the other way. Gravity holds us in. Centrifugation of spin pushes us out. So it's actually the opposite scientifically.
Okay. I would just make sure, because I'm sure there are some people that think that, like I do, that like it's not possible for us to live on this planet without the spinning, to just throw a couple of words in there to show that this is actually possible.
Like, look at the moon. The moon isn't spinning. Right. The moon doesn't spin, but yet the moon has gravity.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Cool. I'm just saying that's one thing where I got taken out. So just like a couple of words in there to sort of show that this science does work.
Right. So just say that gravity holds us in, but we've stopped spinning. So
cool. Yeah.
Right. So our heroes are a young Avla, who is a young scientist and we call it the starry side, so it doesn't have to be dark and light. So starry side is Avla, and her brother Crook, who is not a scientist and actually kind of dislikes scientists. He's a hunter. He's a Viking hunter. He's albino and super awesome. But he's the one that has to escort them over to the bright side. And on the bright side, there's vegetation, there's jungle, and dusk is the city that has risen in this, and it's like an old Incan ancient city that rises up from the forest. And they've got to go, their plan is to go over and actually kidnap the scientists on the bright side to help them get to the bunker that they believe is on the bright side. So the episode opens with them running from a mutated dark creature that is coming after them. They basically crest a hill to come into the bright side. The monster cannot follow and falls back. So they barely make it onto the bright side. And then the bright side has their own defenses and tries to destroy them, because there's been war between the light and the dark side before. So we still have like a Cold War going on from that. Mm-hmm. So they're having to.
And so what's the inciting incident that finally makes them think they need to go to the bunker to do this plan that was never carried out? Like what's the like last straw moment that
Right. Well, I throw you in, which I do. I throw you in without any knowledge like that. We don't see the inciting incidents. You just thrown in. These people are racing from a creature. We don't know what's happening.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so they get to the city. They end up through a lot of adventure, etc. I don't have much time, so a lot of adventure, and they end up finding the scientists. And it turns out those scientists were about to embark on an adventure to go to the dark side to kidnap them, to go to a bunker on the dark side that they think is the source. Unfortunately, both teams have gone to those respective bunkers, and nothing is there. So now they're like, we're screwed. But then the one older crazy scientist has this theory that down near the equator is where the bunker is. And nobody wants that to be true because that is just hell. It's in the wasteland. It's past the cannibals. It's, it's in the bad part. So that's the inciting incident. Is they realize they have got to go to this really hostile bunker to try and split the moon. Unfortunately, in the meantime, one of the pale scientists has been arrested for espionage and is about to be killed. And he's going to be killed at Shade. And Shade is where it's like a steampunk huge fan that comes out and over the city. So as they're racing to save him, it's like clunk, clunk, clunk as this shade comes over. The more shade, the closer it is to his death. Just as he's about to be executed, they rush in together along with the Eclipsed, which are the dark-skinned scientists, explain what has to happen, and finally get permission from the ruler to leave and go together to find the bunker. And that is what season 1 is all about.
Okay, cool. I kind of see a little bit of like elements of like maybe Lost in that. Mm-hmm. And not just because there's a bunker in Lost, but because they're trying to, figure out this big mystery and how to get off of this island, and they're trying to figure out how to get the planet going again, Yeah, and I do think, like, to sort of say up front, like, the backstory of all of this so that you understand the world is blah, blah, blah. And maybe for it to be, like, we open on that this is kind of a routine attempt to get to the bunker. Like, they kind of do this all the time. And this is another push towards that, because it sounds like the real story is that after they get to that one, they find out that really they have to go to a much worse place to do it. So I think that would help a little bit with, figuring out there at the beginning, for me, what the story actually was going to be. And it's actually going to be that they have to go to this much more difficult bunker. So, But I'm thinking just getting that first bunker is the thing. So I would say that, like, it's a routine attempt, to do this, that, every couple of years they attempt it and get their forces together. And, so we meet them in the middle of one of these, and then blah, blah, blah.
That's totally cool. It's just that that's not the choices made in this script, is that they've gone to the bunkers on their side, but they have never crossing the line is a big deal. And crossing the line unauthorized can cause war. So
okay. So you could say that it's a routine thing that they find these bunkers and stuff, and they've exhausted all the ones on their side. And they're making their side.
Okay. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they're making their first attempt to get one on the other side, thinking this is the one, and then they get there and it's not. I think that's a better way to lets me know exactly what the inciting incidents and stuff are, and like sort of what that world is.
Awesome.
Cool. Great job, Carolyn.
Thanks, Carolyn.
So, Dorian, we have 4 more minutes, so I don't think we could do another pitch. But do you have any last words of wisdom, since you've seen and heard 1,000 pitches to everybody?
I would say that getting your verbal pitch really good is a matter of getting a watertight written pitch done. Because when you have a solid written pitch that is right, you basically then just ad-lib it for your verbal. So you don't have to be grasping at all these different like straws or like outlining it for yourself. If you get a solid written pitch done, all the important information that has to be brought out in your verbal pitch, and then you ad-lib that written pitch for your verbal, which is what we focus on in my written pitch clinic, is that, yes, it's about getting that solid written pitch, but it's not just about your written, it's about your verbal. And I'll echo what Joey said about me, saying sort of generalities about me for why you wrote something like, oh, because I have like this unique voice and I wanted to bring a story. Like, no, it has to be something like more compelling than that. Like in my last written pitch clinic, one of the about me's that I left in one of the writer's pitches was because it was about like, in 1985, I was in a smoke-filled college dorm room with this guy, blah, 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 who was telling side-splitting stories about growing up as blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, so she is the perfect person to write this. She knows this guy and he has told these stories and now she's like turning that into a show. And I was like, that's what you want to use your about me for. And you don't want to list like a laundry list of contests and stuff that you've placed in or anything like that. Like it should be, there's only a handful of brand name contests that really mean anything when you say that you place in them. It's like Blacklist, Page, Nickel, Austin Film Festival, but like just all the other kind of like Launchpad, I think too, but like all the other kind of like rinky-dink little contests and stuff, they're not name brand contests and you're kind of just like wasting your breath on those. Like only talk about, contest placements and stuff if it's one of those kind of name brand companies, because then they are kind of automatically listening a little bit more. Totally.
Great advice. Mano Dogs thinks you're pretty cool, by the way.
I fucking am. Anybody have any
And Dorian's email, everybody, is Dorian@roadmapwriters.com. So email her anytime. Mine is Joey@roadmapwriters.com. And just email us anytime to get if you need any last minute advice for any of your pitches or any questions about anything. And thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Dorian, for coming on.
Yeah.
Cool.
See you guys soon.
Bye, guys. See ya.